Milo has a deadline in 3 days. The task itself would take maybe 2 hours. And instead of starting, he reorganizes his desk, researches the best way to do it, opens the document, closes it again, and somehow it's midnight and nothing exists yet. From the outside, it looks like laziness. But Milo isn't lazy. He's actually one of the most detail-obsessed, high-standard people you'll ever meet. Which is exactly the problem. Here's what nobody tells you about perfectionists and procrastination. It's not a contradiction, even though it sounds like one. It's not that perfectionists don't care enough to start. It's that they care so much. The starting itself becomes the most dangerous part of the whole process. And once you see why, the whole pattern stops looking lazy and starts looking like something much more specific. Let's start with what's actually happening. The moment a perfectionist sits down to begin something. For most people, starting a task feels neutral, sometimes even a little satisfying. For a perfectionist, starting means the first version of the thing now exists in the real world, and it's never going to be the polished, finished version living in their head. Psychologists call this the ideal actual gap, the space between the flawless mental image of the work and the imperfect reality of an actual first draft. And that gap doesn't feel small to a perfectionist. It feels like proof. Here's the part that explains the procrastination itself. If a perfectionist never starts, the ideal version in their head stays completely intact, untested, still theoretically perfect. But the moment they actually begin, that fantasy collides with reality. And suddenly, there's a tangible, imperfect thing that can be judged, criticized, or fall short. Psychologists sometimes describe this as protective procrastination, delaying not because of laziness, but because not starting protects the perfect idea from ever having to survive contact with an imperfect attempt. But wait, there's a deeper mechanism running underneath this, and it explains why the anxiety spikes so specifically around starting rather than finishing. There's a concept called fear of evaluation, and for perfectionists, it's not really about other people's judgment. It's about their own. A landmark study on procrastination found that perfectionists don't actually fear failure in the way most people assume. They fear a very specific kind of failure, one that reflects directly on their competence or worth as a person. A task that goes badly isn't just a bad outcome to them, it's evidence. And evidence, once created, can't be unmade. So the safest move, at least emotionally, is to make sure that evidence never gets generated in the first place. This connects to something researchers call all or nothing thinking, a cognitive pattern where anything short of excellent gets mentally filed as failure, with almost no space in between. For a perfectionist, there's no such thing as a rough draft that's simply fine for now. There's only excellent or not good enough. And since most first attempts at anything are naturally somewhere in the middle, starting almost guarantees landing, at least temporarily, in the failure category. Who would want to walk toward that on purpose? Here's something that explains why this pattern is so hard to break, even once someone consciously understands it. Every time a perfectionist avoids starting, the anxiety about the task briefly drops. That relief, even though it comes from avoidance rather than progress, still feels rewarding to the brain. Psychologists call this negative reinforcement. A behavior repeating itself, not because it produces something good, but because it makes discomfort disappear, even temporarily. Which means procrastination isn't really about the task at all. It's about managing the unbearable tension between an imagined perfect outcome and the fear of proving it wasn't achievable. There's also a quieter layer worth naming here. For a lot of perfectionists, self-worth got tied to output somewhere early on, often through praise that focused specifically on results rather than effort. Good grades noticed, hard tries barely mentioned. Over time, the brain learns an equation. Excellent work equals worthy, mediocre work equals a threat to that worth. And under that kind of pressure, starting something that might turn out mediocre doesn't just risk a bad outcome. It risks the entire identity built around being the capable one, the reliable one, the one who always delivers. Now here's something that might completely reframe this pattern. Perfectionist procrastinating isn't evidence of low standards or weak discipline. It's often the opposite. Evidence of standards so high that almost nothing feels safe enough to attempt. That drive isn't the problem. It's usually what makes them thoughtful, thorough, genuinely excellent at what they do, once they actually get moving. The issue was never the ambition itself. It's that somewhere along the way, that ambition got fused with identity, instead of simply being a preference for doing good work. Here's the part worth saying clearly, because a lot of perfectionists carry real shame about this without ever understanding where it comes from. Procrastination isn't a character flaw hiding behind high standards. It's often a nervous system trying to protect something fragile, an identity that feels like it's on the line every single time a new task begins. That's not laziness. That's someone taking their own work seriously enough that starting feels like a genuine risk. The goal was never to lower your standards until nothing feels risky anymore. It's separating the drafting from the judging, letting a first attempt simply exist without deciding what it means about you as a person. Because the version of you that can start messily without spiraling isn't settling for less. It's just finally safe enough to begin. If you've ever avoided starting something you actually cared about finishing well, hit subscribe. And if you want to understand why some people go completely silent during conflict, instead of saying what they actually feel, that video is going to explain more than you expect. Click it.